There's still like lots of tasks that AI cannot handle. The more creative ones, AI is useless.
Welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, product localization, and global expansion. I'm Caterina from Undertow. We create and manage localization programs for B2B SaaS companies so they can grow globally. Today's episode is a bit different. Instead of our usual guest conversation, our founder Nicola Calabrese is taking the mic for a special solo episode. Actually, a two-part series. In this first episode, Nicola explored how AI is transforming localization, where it helps, where it falls short, and why strategy and human expertise still play a crucial role. In the second part, he will go deeper into the practical side, explaining how to design a scalable AI-powered localization program. So, if you are thinking about how to scale localization in an AI-driven world, this two-parts episode will give you both the strategic perspective and the operational framework. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. There's no guest. It's just going to be me. I'll be talking about how to set up a modern localization program. This episode is going to be in two parts. So in the first part, we're going to talk about the potential provided by the AI in the context of localization nowadays, but also the limitations to AI, what it can and cannot do, where it can be used and how, and where people play a role in a localization program. And then in part two, we're going to be a little bit more tactical. So we're going to talk about how to actually design a modern localization program. So as I said, today we're going to talk about the AI and the future localization teams. And we're going to look at how AI is transforming localization, but it's not replacing it. What's crucial, it's going to be here in the future is going to be strategy, orchestration, and human expertise. They are still fundamental. They're going to play a critical role here in the future. Everybody probably heard something similar to AI will replace localization teams. And well, I think these people are missing the point really, in the sense that AI is a powerful tool, but it's not enough. Like you're not going to say, let's say when a calculator came out, that replaced having somebody looking after a company financials. So you have a spreadsheet. And once that was introduced there, you don't need anybody doing finance in a company. You just need a spreadsheet. It's a powerful tool, but it's not enough. In today's episode, we're going to explore the balance. So where AI fits, where actually humans remains indispensable. So you cannot do without humans because AI falls short. Let's start from the first concept is that AI is a tool and not a replacement. So as I said, like AI accelerate work, yes, absolutely. But it cannot define strategy, tone, or cultural context in the sense that it needs somebody to guide through that. You can still use it to help with that, to refine, but you cannot just rely completely on AI to set the strategy for entering a new market. That will be, a bit really reckless. And its orchestration, it's crucial. It still matter. So the processes, the quality assurance, and the stakeholder management are critical. Like you have to put in place, determine somehow what processes are going to be followed for different kind of content, who does what at what step. Some steps are going to be done by automation, absolutely, and AI, but there are others where you have a critical role of humans. Then you got a quality assurance. Again, this is critical. You have two kind of quality assurance, the automated one that can be done by AI on certain checks, but then there's other that is humans as well. It's important. And then also, again, connecting back to the process, something like a feedback loop to feedback whatever is being fixed in QA, so feedback uphill. So next time the output from AI and any other kind of work is going to be better over time. And the last part that is super crucial, again, for related to orchestration, is stakeholder management. There's people involved, there's different people from different departments, different backgrounds, and you need to, taking care of that and managing and coordinate among them, it's crucial. The other thing that is underestimated is the role of translators, because the expertise in a world where there's AI that allows to do a lot of things quickly and as well like translation quickly, and easily, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's a good translation that comes out of it. And that's where translators' expertise is crucial with AI workflows. They have the abilities that allow to spot and give the right linguistic nuances to content And then they can help refine as well, like, for example, all the reference materials that the AI as well uses. So it's more on point. For example, glossaries, style guides, specific instructions for different kind of content. They also have market insights. They know the market, they know the culture, the target market and the target culture. So they can infuse that into the content as well to make it more effective. And they also have like a feeling on how some content is going to be perceived in the market rather than something that the AI doesn't have. So, for example, an AI can produce text that is fluent, but they cannot how it needs to be localized, how local it needs to be done. For example, when you're adapting content into Japanese or in Brazilian Portuguese, the same piece of content might need different kind of adaptation from, it could be like cultural references. So, for example, it's referencing something that is in the source content, let's say it's from the US, so it's referencing something about like baseball. Maybe baseball is not the perfect metaphor for Japanese audience or for Brazilian audiences, or maybe they're referring something specifically to the US and it needs to be adapted to make you resonate with the local target market. And this is cultural. But then there's also like the company specific things that, again, the market research and market insights can help adapt the message, for example, to understand if the positioning needs to be adjusted a little bit, if there's some things that need to be stressful, so you hit all the right pain point when you enter a market. An AI cannot know that. That's based on work done by humans. Again, they could do it with the help of the AI, but humans are still critical for doing that, for doing the research and then giving it to the right people and the inserting in the AI workflows as well. So that's taken into account. So that's crucial. Another thing that is super important is that AI is not just for pre-translation. So a lot of people, when they think about AI in localization, they just think it's automatic translations. But actually, at Undertow, we recently put out a guide on how AI is implemented across major tech companies. I interview leaders at Atlassian, Canva, Slack, and Cinch, and ask them like how they're currently using AI and how they're planning to use AI inside the localization programs. And the surprising thing is that all of them basically, they do use AI for some pre-translation tasks, but the most, or QA, automated quality control, but the most interesting use cases are others that are not maybe the one that initially comes to mind. It could be from task routing. For example, we do that as well at Undertow. We have like agents routing tasks according to specific information and instructions. So each person receives the right task according to their role inside the team. Then you got brief writing. So, for example, when we have to preparing a brief instructions for the language teams, sometimes involves collecting a lot of different documents and then summarizing them, putting them together in a clear, structured way that can be used by the language teams to carry out the work. So they used to take a lot of time and a lot of work. While now that's actually a quite useful use case for AI because AI is quite good at summarizing content, taking out all the critical information and then collecting them together in a structured document. So there might be like different steps or different tools. And obviously always it needs to be checked and that the information is factually accurate. But that makes things so much quicker to do right before. So maybe you will spend hours preparing a briefing document for language teams. Now that takes like a couple of minutes because it's very quick. So another example of a use case that is really interesting and not always considered is terminology extraction. So you can use AI to extract terminology from a piece of content rather than, and it tends to be better than the previously was done like this more statistical model, like extracting, and you get a lot of noise, like words that are just repeated several times because they're common words. AI is smarter than that, so it can extract real critical terminology from a piece of content. And then you can use, again, AI as well to prepare glossaries. So glossary preparation is crucial, and even more so now because the AI needs, during the pre-translation, AI translation needs to be fed some terminology. If you have specific terminology that you wanted to use, it needs to be prepared and prepared properly. That means not just having a list of terms, but also having an explanation of what the terms mean. If you have different translations for a single term, let's say one single English terms correspond to several, like 2-3 options in the target language, depending on the context, you need to explain that context. So both the AI and the people working on the content know exactly when to use specific translation. Sorry to interrupt your listening, but do you want to grow your B2B SaaS in international markets? Because every country is different, and what users value in one market doesn't necessarily matter in another one. At Undertow, we help B2B SaaS companies like yours succeed in their international expansion. We create customized localization strategies that address the unique challenges of each market. In this way, you can effectively attract, engage, and convert customers worldwide. Visit undertowlanguages.com to find out more. And now back to the show. And then it's really helpful to create style guides. Style guides are crucial as well. Again, they've always been crucial, but I like the fact that it's highlighting how important they are now, both for AI and humans, in the sense that it's giving a structured way and instruction to how to treat different part of content, a different type of contents, and what style to use when translating and localizing content. And then, for example, there's also like the more advanced agentic AI usage. For example, use the crowding and agentic AI feature to help with technical fixes. Imagine like with the integrations, you got maybe a page that won't sync back after localization, page won't sync back into WordPress, because we have an integration that takes pages from WordPress, sends them to crowding, and then after we localize them on crowding and push them back to the WordPress. Sometimes when pushing back files, there are errors. It doesn't happen often, but when it happens, it can be really time consuming to go through the file and figure out what's the issue. While using crowding agentic AI, we can like ask the AI to search inside the file if there's anything wrong with it. And it tends to be like some tags maybe that's been misplaced or is corrupted. And it flags it so it can quickly be fixed. And it saves a lot of time. Sometimes it saves you hours that otherwise you will have to spend pouring through the file trying to figure out what might be wrong. And then it helps as well, like for example, with terms updates. So imagine that you have a terminology change. So a term used to be translated with a masculine noun, and now it's going to be a feminine noun. So you need to the translator not only needs to replace that word, but in many languages, they need to change as well the concordance. So if there's the adjectives and any other words around it needs to be adjusted accordingly. So that's something that you cannot quickly do with a search and replace, like a traditional search and replace. It will be really easy to introduce mistakes like that. So again, you can ask the agentic AI in crowding to replace that throughout the files or maybe several files that you have. And then he's going to show you where it changed and what it changed, so you can quickly check that no mistake was introduced. So again, instead of maybe spending hours going through like filtering and then try one sentence by sentence fixing it, you spend like a couple of minutes just going through the report saying what was changed. And if, let's say, you don't trust the AI, you can still filter what was recently changed and then just go through the segments quickly rather than going through the whole file or files, because sometimes it might be big. Let's say it's a terminology change, you're changing it across product, my website, help center, and emails. So it's quite a lot of content to check if you just check everything. So that helps. And in other cases, it can help with some formality. So imagine you get a feedback from a local marketer or local sales rep that says that emails needs to be more formal. What you will have to go ask the translator to go in and change it sentence by sentence, rewrite the translations. Now you can ask the translator to use agentic AI to ask the agent to change the tone to formal of the email, and then they just have to check that it looks good. Again, rather than spending maybe a couple of hours, they can do it like in 10 minutes. These are kind of usage. They're not pre-translation or automatic translation. They're not automatic quality assurance, which AI can do and can help really well with that. But there's so many other usage that maybe are not always explored or not the first one that comes to mind when you think about it. And the advantage of this, again, going back to the idea of like AI being a tool that doesn't replace human, but makes them helps them work better. In this case is that I just discussed, it means using AI means teams don't have to spend so much time on these like tedious tasks, like going through a file and just changing the terms over and over. It's not a fun job, to be honest, but it is necessary, because if you have a terminology change, it needs to be changed consistently throughout the content experience. But it is a tedious job. So with AI, it becomes a less tedious job, like much quicker. So they don't have to spend too much time on that, don't waste too much mental energy on that. So they can keep like their focus for more creative tasks that are required. So, and again, it saves a lot of time you can spend on more creative tasks. That works as well with in general, with resources inside a company. So the other thing that I want to mention as well about AI, and I would like you to think about this, is basically model localization is not isolated. It's part of product growth. So it's part of like, again, in a way, AI made localization or mainstream in a way. And the good thing about that is that now it can be seen and it could be easier to connect it to general business strategy and how crucial localization is. Because AI can really help to do a lot of tasks and a lot of things, But if you don't have a clear strategy, it's chaos. And by strategy, I mean like a localization strategy that aligns with the business objectives and the resources you have. So that means that you segment content. So you decide different approaches for different kind of content. So let's say you have a product, there's going to be one strategy. For emails, there's going to be another one. For the website, is a different one. For the help center is another one altogether. And you have different tiers, like divide or as well, like markets in groups. If you have several markets, you decide some are more, they have much more potential than other. And when I say potential here, I'm talking about the money that they bring into the company, because at the end of the day, again, we want to connect business goals with the localization strategy connected. So if the business, what the business wants to do, wants to grow. So if the localization strategy needs to reflect that, in the sense that the resources are not unlimited. So if to grow the business, then let's say you have like 6 markets, but 2 of them are really important. The other 4 are not going to bring that much money. So that needs to be reflected into your localization strategy. So you focus more resources on those 2 markets and less on the other 4. And then the other thing is ownership. So again, you need a strategy inside a company. If everybody does a little bit of everything, that's not an ownership, that's just chaos. It's spread all around. So you need to establish as well who's in charge of what. And again, localization can help bring people together, because when you start thinking about localization as the bridge that connects product, sales, marketing, some customer success, and any other department, you bring them all together, and localization is the connecting point among them. For a localization program in general to start, there are 4, what I usually call 4 pillars. So one is strategy. So what I said, like aligning the localization strategy with the business strategy and business goals. So there's a connection. That means it's going to make it easier as well to ask for resources and justify why you're investing in certain solutions, rather than just like saying we're going to translate quicker. And then the people are crucial. This is the second pillar. It's very important. People are the center of this. Center localization at the center of companies still. And they're going to, it's crucial, like the role of different people and how much value they add to the process. Because otherwise AI is just a tool that allows you to do things quicker. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's not going to work. And then you got technology, obviously, because you want to use technology as much as possible to automate the, let's say, tedious tasks. So you don't have to move file around, to route tasks, to do things that are repetitive over and over and over. Just maybe a lot of admin can be taken care of by technology. So you got integrations between systems, you have automations, and then alerts to keep you on top of everything. And then last but not least, processes. Processes are crucial because, again, you need to have a clear and documented, that's an important, documented way of doing things. The importance of documenting it and establishing and documenting is because so if you need to onboard some new people on the team, it's going to be quicker and easier to do that. The last thing that I wanted to talk about today is that I see, and I think many other people are seeing this, that there's a talent exodus. So a lot of skilled translators are leaving the industry. And that's because they feel endangered by AI. They see that a lot of people prefer say that AI is why do we need translators, right? You can just use AI to translate everything. So a lot of people are leaving the industry. So what I see coming, it's just going to be a shortage of very good people working in this industry. Because as I said, like the 4 pillars, but the second one is people. And translators are crucial. In a world where everybody can get like a basic translation, like not amazing, but like basic translation with a click, the companies that do invest in localization, and if they want to differentiate themselves from the rest of the market and their competitors, they can invest in proper localization with humans, so skilled translators that know the vertical, so they know the industry they are addressing, they know linguistics and the native language and the target market very well. Because the problem is AI can produce really generic translation. Might be kind of, sort of okay. So to make it better, you need to provide more context and more refining like references. So for example, terminology, style, prompts, all those things needs to be done by somebody who not only speaks the language, you cannot get anybody who speaks the language to do that. That's why translators are critical. Translators they have profound linguistic knowledge of their native language, profound cultural knowledge of the native culture, of the target market, and they understand the industry that specialized in that. They've been working on that for years, most of the time, and they can basically infuse that into the AI processes on one end, so upstream, and downstream, they can check that the results are good. So you need both things. Like, yeah, they shouldn't spend like all day, probably keep fixing always the same mistakes. They should keep an eye on the quality at the end of it, but the most critical part is going to be at the beginning. There's still like lots of tasks that AI cannot handle. The more creative ones, AI is useless. If you ever done a transcription campaign or a good copywriting campaign, those are like when you're adapting transcriptions, when you're adapting creative content into different languages and you're translating the impact on the audience rather than the words themselves. And copywriting, AI is not really good at that. In English, it can kind of do copywriting. I still don't think it's great, but in other languages, it really sucks, to be honest. And there, like, again, humans are critical. Having AI taking care of like some of the less critical content, in the sense that a content maybe does have a shorter lifespan, or maybe it's very like straightforward and repetitive, that means the company will need less resources on that kind of content, but they can focus and use resources to invest on more creative content, adaptation and creation. And that's where you're going to need skilled translators and writers. I'm working on a solution of this, on how to find the right people. But I think for now, it's really critical that people understand that skilled translators and linguists are crucial for the success of any localization program. And in the future, having the right talent, having the right people is going to be the real differentiator in global expansion, because the technology can be replicated across different setups, but the people are unique. And the skill set is what's going to make the difference. So to wrap up a little bit for today, the AI is a multiplier, is not a replacement of people. And in the next episode, we'll get a little bit more technical. We're going to look into how to design a scalable AI-powered localization program, from workflows to governance. So stay tuned, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help B2B SaaS companies grow in any language. Get in touch if you want to know more. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. If you want to support us, remember to give 5 stars to the podcast. See you next time.